Man, which reminds me, I actually have to upload my own podcast episode.
Yes.
I haven't done it, so it's just on YouTube.
Hey. Okay. We are live. Okay, let's do it. Cool.
You don't want to see the comments?
I mean, sure. Like that.
Yeah.
Hello. Jessica, Villa 101. Jessica, welcome. Okay.
Hello.
Hi.
Hi.
So, welcome back, everybody. I'm Claudia.
And I'm Ariel.
This is Not Your Mommy's Advice podcast, live recording, episode 18. Hey.
Yeah. So it's been a minute since we recorded again. So just what, like maybe 3 weeks or 4 weeks now?
I think so, something like that. Yeah.
Yeah.
There's
So
been travel and other things, and we're back.
yeah, but we're back and hopefully get the ball rolling
Yeah.
again. But I look at it at this point just trying to be consistent as much as we can in whatever way that is. So
Yeah, for sure.
we're trying to make it happen, and we hear you and we see you in the comments and in the feedback that we get.
Absolutely.
So
Yeah.
just know that we see that and we want to keep making this content for you all.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
So if you're tuning in, we appreciate you. We love all the love. So thank you for rocking with us. So we're gonna go ahead and get the spinner going here to pick our episode topic for the day. So Adiel's got what is this? A wheel? A spinner?
Yeah, it's a spinner.
It's a spinner. And you want to do it? I knew it. I knew this was going to be the one.
Well, there's hella of these in here.
Yeah, I know. All right, go ahead and read the episode topic.
It's a rebuilding trust after infidelity.
All right, rebuilding trust after infidelity. That is what we are talking about today, ladies and gentlemen, and everyone in between and outside of that.
Yeah. Yeah, infidelity. I think it's one of those. I think it's like I don't know. I consider it a pretty taboo conversation point. I don't know how many people like talk about infidelity, and I think kind of the culture that we have about it, I feel like here doesn't help, but then there's a lot of like shame and a lot of embarrassment that goes along with infidelity on, I think, both parties. I don't know. I guess I guess I'm curious to know what are your initial thoughts about it. Those are kind of some of my initial thoughts, and then we could dive into some more, I guess, juicier parts of it.
Sure. I was just gonna say, like, for folks who have any curiosities that are like listening, I would love to hear like what their thoughts are about infidelity. Just like off of first. That was a good idea.
Uh-huh.
We're gonna change the topic out here on the title, but I'm curious, like, if folks have initial thoughts or like have strong feelings about it, or they're like, maybe you got cheated on or you were the cheater. My thing is, sure. I feel like when you say, it's a taboo topic and people don't really talk about it, I think that's an accurate description. And it makes sense. Like, it's most of the time, if someone's going to have an affair, it's going to be in secrecy, hopefully, because that would be really painful if you're just openly cheating on your spouse, if you're in a committed monogamous relationship. But I think, like, who wants to talk about that? Like, who wants to like go to their friend circle and be like, yeah, man, like my partner cheated on me. Like, that sucks. So
Yeah.
I feel like it kind of makes sense that there is shame around it. And it can be really like, not polarizing. That's not the word I'm looking for. There's just like really intense emotions that are like involved in it. And I think that's just what comes up for me.
Yeah, it's intense to think because, like, to me, it is taboo. Like, I repeat again, and what's crazy is that a lot of us are actually products of infidelity that we never really actually talked about. At least our families didn't really talk about, and with that comes a lot of silence. And as I'm learning, working with children, one of the things
Mhm.
that I'm realizing and understanding more is like the impacts of silence and how much that actually affects one's development as they grow older, and having to create a narrative about what's
Mhm.
actually happening, especially if infidelity is in the air and it's never spoken about. It's just a thing where you create uh, a story, and sometimes you're at the core of the story, even though that may not actually be true, especially with children. I think infidelity is one of those things that I think affects children in many ways, but uh, I think we see the impacts of that when we're older, right? The normalization of infidelity potentially, or even the leaning towards infidelity because that was modeled when you're little.
Mhm.
So,
Yeah. I mean, I think at the core for me, like there's an unmet need.
mhm,
So like I don't know. I'm not about to do a dissertation on why people cheat, but for me it feels like okay, there's a need that's not being met, whether you can consciously acknowledge that in yourself and then know how to communicate that to your partner in a way that is constructive and productive and honest, and that they're able to then have that emotional stamina to tolerate that and then work on it together. Like that's like a whole fucking process. You know what I'm saying? So
mhm,
it's like, you know, that is like a pretty sophisticated process to be able to facilitate. And if like you miss any of those steps, I feel like there's an opening to be like unfulfilled, unsatisfied, and try and get your needs met somewhere else, which is, obviously that causes, for the most part, I think a lot of pain. Cause like if you, again, are in a committed monogamous relationship with your partner and you have made that like explicit, or sometimes not even explicit, but like you're committed to each other in that way and you step out on that relationship, then that just really fucking sucks because that I think like really causes a lot of betrayal. Like
mhm.
causes the other partner to feel betrayed.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Or
It's
even, I
really
mean,
hurtful.
it's hurtful, and then, I mean, I would argue though sometimes it also causes a lot of comfort. Uh,
What?
it causes a lot of comfort in if that is what you're used to, then there is like I think like a comforting part about like I'm not worthy of somebody staying with me and being true with me.
Or like I knew this was gonna happen type
I
of
knew
thing?
exactly. So
Okay,
you
like a
kind of
self-fulfilling
it's like a
prophecy.
self-fulfilling prophecy type of deal. Like if that is something that you haven't worked with, and I think like at least in my own experience, I think that that is a little bit of what occurred for me as I had partners that did that were like that did cheat on me, and how much of that was like that's not to say that I don't think that I mean I think I play a role in it. I don't think that I'm the cause
Mhm.
of it. I think I've realized that now as I'm older, but I think when you're younger, I think that's the leniency of it. You kind of lean into like, well, I did something wrong. I should have done this. I should have if I would have done this differently, then my partner wouldn't have done that.
Mhm.
Because the language wasn't there, or isn't there, or hasn't been talked about enough to know that I mean, there's 2
It's
people,
not, yeah.
at least in a
Mhm.
monogamous relationship, there's 2 people in the dance, right? And
Yeah.
regardless if you're the one cheating on or the one the one who got cheated on, like, or the one that's cheating and the one that's being cheated on, like, the both of us are still playing a role in it.
Totally.
And I think
Mhm.
sometimes yeah, so sometimes it could go really deep into like, I knew this was gonna happen, or like, it was just a matter of time
Mhm.
type of deal. It's too good to be true. Like, and out of that, I think comes like a lot of work that needs to be done on people's parts, really. At least for me, I know that was the case.
Yeah.
Like when it happened for me when I was younger, like I think that was one of the hardest parts about being cheated on was like this again, I kind of go back to the silence part of it. Like I didn't particularly know like what my partner was needing from me. And I was also
Mhm.
hella young at that too, right? So like we were both meeting at this really young point in our lives and not knowing the language about, like, what exactly is being need like, what does my partner actually need, and then what do I need, like, that wasn't necessarily talked about. So, yeah, you're gonna go and look for it somewhere else. I think when you're young, I think there is, like, uh like, if it's not modeled for you, then again, you kinda create that story,
Yeah.
and at least for me, I think that that's what kinda played out. Even though,
Mhm.
like, the person that I was with came from a family that, like, parents were together, blah, 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 and that's different from me. Like, I didn't have that. Like, I only really grew up with my mom, and my dad was kinda separate. So I didn't particularly have that modeled, and maybe that led into the story that I have about infidelity. And I think, like, being really young and being like, "Well, I'm not gonna cheat on my partner," right? Like, that's, like, my
Yeah, that
that
was
was,
like a
like
definitive
that was, like, a
thing that you
definitive thing.
mhm.
But that's not to say that I never played with the idea that, like,
Yeah.
that there were situations that I was in that, I mean, one could consider cheating depending on what your
Yeah.
barometer or your thing is, right? Like,
Mhm.
me texting other girls or me meeting up with other girls, like, outside and not telling my partner that that's what I was doing.
Yeah.
Like, that stuff happened, and I don't know if that was actually cheating on their part, and I don't even really know if I consider it cheating,
Yeah.
but I know that when I was doing it, there was something happening for me that I didn't particularly know, and that was interesting to also feel as somebody that was like, "Well, I'm not gonna cheat on my partner," but there was, like, this thrill about it, there was,
Mhm.
like, this, like, I don't wanna say like, fantasizing about it,
Mhm.
but yeah, I mean, I looked forward to, uh 'cause I'm thinking about this one particular person after my classes at state. Like, I remember, I was with my ex-partner, and I had this class that I was with this girl that we just, like, we'd linked up and blah, 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 blah. And then, so then it started all with just me giving her a ride home. And then little by little, it started, like, escalating a little bit more. And then, like, there was a moment where, like, "Oh, do you want to come inside?" And I was like, "I don't know about that." And then pulling back, but then thinking back now, and there's a lot of moments there too for me of, like, fuck, I should have just cheated on her. Like, she cheated on me. Like, I should have just done it when whatever would have happened behind those doors, right? Like, that could have been for whatever reason or whatever thing would have came up, but I never actually went to the door, never went inside. And but then there's, like, that shame part of it too, right? Because, like, for me, like, there was, like, that shame part of, like, well, I got cheated on. Why didn't I just do that?
Mhm.
If that makes any sense.
Yeah.
Like, why didn't I go through with it, even though it was being done to me? And I didn't particularly know all the times, but, like, yeah, so you start playing with this idea of, like, what is cheating? What does your partner consider cheating? And that was never talked about in my past relationship.
Yeah, absolutely. So I want to read here. Child 415 is saying, I think monogamy is set up to manipulate the way people communicate. Monogamy set up to manipulate the way people communicate. I mean, I'd love to hear more if you're willing to share about what that means. Also, shout out to Mighty Juicy. Hello, I see you're tuning in. And to everybody who's tuning in, thank you. I mean, I think I I I mean, I think it's really interesting that you propose this idea of, like, it being manipulative. Like, it definitely, to me, feels like, to your point, right? You're like, you have a certain parameters of, like, what is allowed versus not allowed and what's taboo versus not taboo. And I feel like that really has at least set me up and can set many people up of, like, well, I'm not really supposed to tell my partner anything that would, like, maybe hurt their feelings. And so if there's, like, a whole range of things that I'm not able to share with you about my own fantasies and desires, then, like, that's really gonna set me up to fail, because, or at least, like, there's a whole part of me that you're not able to know and fulfill, or at least, like, consider helping me with that. Um, and if I don't think that's available to me, and you don't even know that's even a thing that's happening, then I feel like that's a really easy open door to just, like, walk through and be like, "All right, well, then I will go find it in someone else or in an experience with somebody else."
Mhm. Yeah, I mean, the language around manipulation is interesting because I don't even know if that's actually like explicitly done. I do think that there is an aspect of it that is implicit in regards to monogamy and being with one person and like you have to be with that person. But like I think back about my own experiences, especially when I was younger, like how different that relationship would have played out and the way it ended would have been completely different if there would have been a conversation about those needs and exploration because we were so young. How much can we actually tolerate being with other people but still coming back together?
Yeah,
And how different that relationship could have been. You know what I'm saying? Like how it would have played out. I mean, it didn't play out the way that I mean, it played out the way it needed to play out to
sure.
teach me the lesson that I needed to be taught. But
Mhm.
like it I think back about those experiences and how much like that influence like the pain that I think I ended up going through when it ended up culminating into this larger uh like a larger story, you know, at least with that partner, like there was a larger story there that ended up getting played out. And I never actually got to get closure around like what was actually my partner needing at that point. And that,
Right.
you know, and then, you know, I met you like at 2 years later. So then that was,
Mhm.
and then that completely changed the story of that.
Yeah. I mean, I think I don't know if this is like too far off or like too theoretical, but I think about the book Colonialism, Sexuality, and wait, no, Sexuality in Colonial Latin America.
Mhm,
You know what I'm talking about?
mhm,
And then like in that book, what's discussed is like the roots of like the tradition of marriage and purity and like reputation and shame. And I mean, it's really interesting to think about. I mean, when I was in Almaguer's class, I know I talk about this all the time, but he was going over how like women being transferred as property from the father's family to the husband's family, and there was like an economic trade. So whatever it was that they were trading, like cattle or livestock or whatever it was that was being offered for the woman, and that is the reason why the woman took the husband's last name. And I was just like, and the reason why they were all white is because it's like a symbol of being a virgin. And I was like so fucked up about it because I was like, I don't want to like uphold this tradition in that way. But I think to this person's point, right? Like, I think that there is many ways that like because there's been generations of just believing that this is a thing that is like the noble thing to do, like the normal thing, like this is what everybody does, and like it's because it's for love and it's ethical. Like I don't know if I'm making sense, but it's like you're supposed to know how to navigate a marriage, and it's like the most normal thing in the world, and it's actually like quite difficult, and it's not as easy. I think as it's not as like black and white and transactional as I think it's like you just stay, you know, uh loyal, I guess, to for lack of a better word, to your person. Does that make sense, or am I just being all over the place?
No, I mean, I think like I mean, I mean, I don't know if we're talking at least to me, like where I'm talking about it in the stage that I'm talking about, at least in my own personal experience, I wasn't married to
No,
that
I got
person,
you.
and
Yeah,
you know, and even when what happened with us, like we weren't married, so
but it's
like
still so insidious that it frames your entire
correct,
conceptualization of how you're supposed to do a romantic partnership.
correct.
That's what I mean.
Yeah, because
Like, you're not married. Yeah.
even as boyfriend and girlfriend, like the narrative is like you got to be loyal. And now I remember
Yeah.
it makes me think about my high school kids when I would hear about their relationships and they'd talk to me about it, or like they would write about it in their shit, and they'd be like, "Well, you know, they're just not loyal. Like I need somebody that's loyal." So like the
Exactly.
loyalty, like those like pieces from colonialism, like very much still seep into even non-marriage relationships,
Yeah, and it's so
and
controlling because sometimes it's like, "Don't look at another person," like, "Don't talk to them." Like, I know that that was what was modeled for me in our house,
Mhm,
which was like, my family was very much like what is the phrase that they use? It was like, "No hay que dar el diablo un oportunidad,"
mhm,
which I was just always like, "Oh, that's really interesting." So, like, the way it was in my house growing up was like, okay, like, you're not allowed to hang out with single people. That's just not a thing that you do. So
mhm.
everybody's partnered, and it's just, like, wild because like what you're talking about like going off to see a friend or like giving a girl a ride home is like not even a thing that would ever be entertained. Like that would be seen as wildly inappropriate in my house growing up.
And that's what I'm saying, right? Like it's like the cheating paradigm is like really really expansive on what we consider cheating. And I mean, like again, like giving somebody a ride to somebody that like that's just what you've been told that you can't do, especially with somebody that's not your partner at that moment. Like, yeah, you're stepping out of line, you're stepping out of that. So I think that that to me was one of the more confusing parts about cheating is like not knowing really the parameters of what is cheating, what is
Yeah, and then how do you
considered cheating.
ask?
Yeah,
Like,
because it's like, is cheating just me having sex with somebody? And so then my line was always that, like, well, I didn't cheat on you because I didn't have sex
yeah.
with that other person.
Wait, so one time I asked my ex, so you remember those like 18 and up dance clubs?
Hmm.
So like one time we were out and I think like I don't remember what happened, but my ex had to like take somebody to the bathroom
Hmm.
and I was dancing with somebody else. And I mean, I had whatever. And then I think the guy grabbed my ass and and so my poor ex. So he comes back and I go, "Hey, can I ask you a question?" And he's like, "Sure." And I go, "Would you be upset if somebody grabbed my ass?" Like, hello. This is like just pure 18-year-old vibes. Like,
Uh-huh.
and he's like, "What the fuck are you talking about? Of course, be fucking upset." I'm like, you know what I mean? But I'm like, it was such an innocent, like, I actually genuinely, I'm like, I actually don't know if you'd be upset. And he was fucking pissed and was like, for the rest of the night, just hella mad. I don't know if he was like mad at me, also never told me. I'm like, and then here I am internalizing it like it's my fault. Like, damn, I should have never danced with that person because I set myself up for that person to grab my ass and I didn't know. And now my boyfriend's mad at me. And I'm like, but honestly, like it for me, I'm like, that was a genuine ass question. Like, I'm like, is that something that you would be upset about? Because it doesn't fucking mean anything because we're just dancing.
Mhm.
Um,
I mean, but it goes back to that property thing that you just talked about, women seen as property. So like, you know, to that person, it could have been like easily like considered like, well, that's my property. You know, what are you doing touching my person like that,
I
you
mean,
know?
I don't love the idea of somebody grabbing your ass.
My ass?
Yeah. Also, I don't love the idea of somebody grabbing my ass. So
Well, now, right?
I
Like, I
know.
mean, but like, we're talking about 18
Nobody's
years, but
grabbing anybody's ass right now at a club.
but
Okay.
I think we're highlighting the fragility that happens when you're young and like not having that conversation about what is crossing the line, right?
Yeah,
Because
for sure.
I mean, I think I would be upset too, right? Of like, what do you mean somebody just grabbed your ass? You know what I'm saying?
You
Like,
would
well,
know
I
because I
was
would
like,
fucking tell you.
I was like, no, man, I was in the bathroom for like a minute. Like, what? How did that happen?
Okay, so I will say the other part to that was like I really wanted to dance with other people. I didn't want
Hmm.
to just dance with him. And I felt like that was my part of my internal that okay. So if I'm being really honest, the whole reason why I left that relationship was because like this person is wonderful and this is the best relationship I'd ever had in my life up until that point, which is not saying much because I was only 18. But he like treated me great. My parents loved him and but I was like, I don't know, I just feel like I like I like having attention from other people.
Hmm.
I've literally always been that way, and I'm like, "This is great," but I also felt like this really black and white thing where I was like the deduction was like, if I like this attention from other men, then that must mean that I am not ready to be in a monogamous relationship with that person.
Hmm.
Or any relationship with that person, so then that must mean that I will break up with them,
Hmm.
which is, like, doesn't even leave any like, I didn't even give him an opportunity to tell me, like, what was okay or not, like, I just decided for all of us,
Hmm.
you know, which is, like, fine, obviously, it happened the way that it needed to happen, and I was like, "Let me break up with this person before I cheat on him," but, um but still, it's just like, you know, imagine how different a conversation would have sounded like if I was like, "Hey, like, I feel like I need more fun in my life," or like, have a desire to like feel sexy or sensual. I mean, fuck, I would not have known how to express that at 18, but
Mhm.
like still like I want to flirt and have fun and like that's part of my personality and imagine if that person would have been like, "Cool, like I want that for you too," or like, "No, that makes me uncomfortable." Then that's a different conversation is what I'm trying to
Yeah.
say.
Hey, well, bless that 18-year-old that's thinking that way. But, I mean, I think it highlights though, again, like like the fragility of when you're younger and you play around with these ideas of infidelity and not totally having a lot of language to it, and I think that there is a lot of shame, I think, on both sides, I think that that example really highlights on both sides, like, what the potential of shaming can be in that, and that's not to say that young people shouldn't be in relationships, but I think that there is an aspect there that the curiosity, the knowing your
Mhm.
boundaries, knowing what is it that you need, what is it that you want, and it's one of those things that maybe you need to just go through it, which is,
Yeah.
I mean, essentially that's the way I ended up having to learn it, right? Of like, oh, I actually this is too much. Like so in my case, like, yeah, it took the other person to be like, it's done, dude. Like I can't do this anymore. And I was the one that I was like, "What do you mean? What happens now? What happens now that where it's over?" You know what I'm saying? And like really struggling with like, I'll take this abuse to be here with this. You know what I'm saying? And like, and that wasn't healthy either. And like, but I
Mhm.
think that that comes at the expense, or like that comes as a consequence of not knowing my own boundaries and knowing what my own threshold of what cheating is in a relationship, which
Mhm.
is what ends up happening later on with us, because I'm like, oh, okay, I know now that this is not what I like. I
Yeah.
know that this is not what I want, you know?
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's interesting to see like I was just talking about earlier today, like I have this like I don't know if it's like an attachment thing that happens or like a pattern that it is that I have where I give myself this narrative of like, "Oh, I can't have this thing," and I'm now being a brat about it and or whatever. Like there's a part of me as you're saying, like, yes, we have very young experiences, but I also think that there's like a very young part of me that there's an opportunity for and has I've we have created an opportunity for a lot of healing for that young part of me that's like, I can't have this thing and now I'm upset and like I want to throw a tantrum about it and I want to have the thing that I want to have in the way that I want to have it on the terms that I want.
Mhm.
Um because dad said no, basically. Like
Mhm.
that's the I know that sounds really weird, but it's like it almost has that flavor because, like, when we first started dating, we moved in together, and I was like, "This is fucking fantastic. I love this man. This is awesome." Except for that, like, you're pretty conservative, and I feel like I can't tell you things, and, now I feel like there's parts of me that, like, you don't accept, and I just, like, never told you those things.
Mhm.
I was like, I feel like I like can't be my full self and like you're never going to understand me and like I don't feel free. And I think ultimately the reality is that that really didn't have anything to do with you. It was just like the way I was projecting onto you.
Mhm.
And then I was like, well, maybe this isn't the relationship for me.
Mhm.
If you can't handle me.
Mhm. Can't handle it. Yeah, I couldn't handle it. I
And you
mean,
know what? I was wrong.
but I think at that point though, like I had been cheated on, and it was a really painful experience to go through that and having to literally kind of be cold turkey about relationships after that, and being like, well, I'm not really looking for a partner after I got cheated on, and then learning more about like the expansive nature of that cheating was really hurtful, right? Like there was a lot of stories behind it. There was a lot of like, going behind my back, and like the way that I found things out was really painful, because it wasn't even told to me by the other person. And I think
Mhm.
that that was one thing that was different about when it happened in our relationship, was that there was actually a conversation that we had.
Mhm.
And so when I'm thinking about this, the first part of this question, which is how do you rebuild trust, you have to acknowledge that trust has been broken.
Yeah.
And most, at least from my experience with infidelity, that acknowledgement of I just broke your trust was never acknowledged. and maybe it's because we were young and we didn't have the language for it. But I know for us, when we were older, or when I was older, not too much older,
Mhm.
but there was at least a little bit more time for me to reflect and like really understand, like, okay, this is too much. This is I don't like this. Um, so when we actually had that conversation about when that happened in our relationship, it, it was a healing aspect of it. And I know for me, like I remember you saying those things to me of like, "Oh, I feel like you just can't handle me or whatever, blah, 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 blah."
Mhm.
And me being able to see not necessarily through it, but being able to then put myself in a place of like, this is actually I'm not partner Ariel. I'm not boyfriend Ariel in this moment. I'm actually a friend Ariel. And
Mhm.
like, even if we're not together after this, like after this moment, uh, cause that's kinda what it felt like. I was like, I to me, like, I was like, "I don't know if we're gonna be together after this,
Yeah, you literally said that.
cause I was like, "I think this is yeah, this went too far," you know what I'm saying? Like, for me,
Mhm. Mhm.
and just remember feeling like, "I'm gonna be here, though, for you as a friend, and, like, whatever is it that you need from me," and, that led to actually, even another conversation about alcohol, and I don't know if that was, like, placed on that of like the reasoning behind it, but I know that that led to a conversation about alcohol.
Mhm.
And it even led to a conversation about alcohol for me,
Mhm.
which I hadn't particularly had up until that point.
Yeah.
And I mean, it played a role, but I think at the core of it are these other needs, right? And these other thoughts. But I just
Mhm.
remember like going to the AA meetings, going to meetings and being there for you and like trying to support you in that
Mhm.
and I think at the core of it, just trying to be a friend, even though I had been hurt, but I could see past the thing of like, you can't handle me. I'm like,
Yeah, it was really interesting. I mean, it's really interesting to think about it now because so for folks who don't know the timeline, I had an affair before Adele and I got married. And we were in an explicitly committed monogamous relationship. So it
mhm,
was like it was very I laugh about it, but only because it was like so incredibly deeply painful and like I know how much I hurt him and how much I hurt myself. So it was like really like it's even thinking back on it now is like so it's so sad. Like it's such a sad time, you know. And I think I mean, I definitely feel like we were, like, meant to be together because of, like, the timing of the way that things happened, because, like, I think under any other circumstances, you might not have been as gracious, you know? You
mhm,
might not have been able to zoom out and been like, "Oh, this person that I care about, like, needs somebody, and I'm actually gonna actively choose to be there for them in this way," because, like, you know, you were hurt at the time and felt betrayed, and with good reason. So you could have just been like, you can find another friend to be there for you. Um, and also on the other side to that, you weren't punitive. It wasn't like endless. It wasn't endless, like me being indebted to you for the rest of my life. Like you actually allowed me to like come to the table to offer a repair.
mhm,
And I think that really takes a deep level of vulnerability, on both sides to be like, "Yeah, I'm majorly fucked up, and, like, I'm willing to have conversations around, like, how to make this," um, I was gonna say better, but, like, not even, like, how to repair trust here because, like, that's a really difficult question to answer. And like shit comes up in moments where it's like, damn, I didn't think that was going to bother me when you didn't answer the phone, but actually that was really fucking triggering. So like, let's have a conversation about that.
mhm. Yeah, I mean, I think like as much as it was reparative for you, I think it was reparative for me because, like I said, like I didn't have closure in the relationship before this one, where the cheating again was really expansive.
Mhm.
For you, I feel like it was really kind of like one and done type of deal. And but it gave me the opportunity to I'm looking at it back now and like why I would go through with it. I think a part of it is like this aspect of me that's really like idealistic of like, yeah, I still believe in people, even though like it's not that I could take the hurt, and that's not that it's okay for me to get hurt like that, but I do feel like I was like, I mean, yeah, I'm your friend, dude. Like, and I think at the core of it, I think even in a relationship, like I'm still your friend, and I still consider you my best friend. And yeah, I'm gonna be there. You know what I'm saying? Like I'm gonna be there and like it's painful, but I know that I didn't get this closure. I didn't get this opportunity in the last relationship. So let me see out what actually happens when I actually know what's at the
Mhm.
core of why you're doing this. And that's not I'm not saying that everybody should go do that. I'm not saying that. But
Yeah.
in this particular
But I
moment for
also
me.
wanted that too.
So
I think
you
that's
wanted that too.
different, 'cause it doesn't sound like your ex wanted that because she straight up said, "I don't want this anymore."
Mhm.
Um,
Well, she didn't even say that. It was
she's
just
like, "It's over."
it's
Or
over.
she's
It's
not
done.
yeah,
Like it's
yeah, so it's over.
we're it's done. Dog. Like
But
go fucking do something else.
for me, I think, like I mean, so the reason why I say it's interesting is because I was like, I think part of me did have a freak out and, like, I was probably on some level, like, not pushing you away, but, like, pushing a boundary. I was like, "Oh, there's probably an unconscious part of me that was like, let's see if you can actually handle handle me." Which is like, it sounds really fucked up when I'm saying it out loud, but, like, I think that's the work that happened after where, like, my therapist and other healers were like, "Well, let's reflect on this. Like, how could you have done this in a way where it's like maybe you're taking the unconscious and bringing it into consciousness and, like, kind of achieving the same goal without doing it and, like, blowing up your entire life, like,
Mhm.
hurting people along the way." That was, like, what Maestra Teresa ultimately was like, "How are you gonna learn the same lessons and integrate them without hurting people tremendously along the way?
Mhm.
Like, let's ask for those lessons." Which I thought was, like, so profound because 'cause I'm like, "Oh," at the moment, I was like, I don't know what other way this could have gone." But after that, I was like, "Oh, things can happen, like, we can have difficult conversations without actually, like, having it be as painful as it was, you know?"
Yeah, I mean, I think it led to practices that we're still doing today, which I think, like, I mean, if that wouldn't have happened, I don't know if I would have gone to therapy, like for my own work
Mhm.
and my own things. And, out of that pain comes this, this also like really rich understanding of myself and like being able to describe and like play around with the ideas of like non-closure and closure and healing and what is my role in that and how do I still play a role in healing in somebody that hurt me. And maybe that's really like meta and maybe that's really big, but that's the way I look at stuff. Like I look at stuff in that way, like a bigger picture of like I'm in this moment for whatever reason, kind of to your point of like you felt ready for that. And I for some reason felt ready at that point as well to go through that like tribulation, go through that trial.
Mhm.
And not and again, not to like make you a bad person, not to make you feel like the shittiest person in the world. But I think for
Yeah.
me, like I think just being really curious about like what what is actually happening when somebody like on the front end, like to me, like what is it like what happens for you? Like what happened for you to step out of this relationship, even
Mhm.
though on the surface I felt like I was a good boyfriend. I felt like I was there. I felt like I was doing the right things. I was doing, at least to me, right?
Mhm.
Like I'm doing everything. I'm not cheating on you. I'm not talking to nobody. I'm not like, I'm not having sex with anybody other than you. Like what is actually happening? Like what did I do? What did I do wrong? And then coming to fruition, like coming to find out that I didn't particularly do anything wrong,
Yeah.
but there was actually like a larger conversation that we needed to have if
Mhm.
we actually wanted to step forward into the relationship that is much older than the younger relationship that we had.
Mhm, totally. Yeah. And I think also in those, well, immediate months after the affair when we were, like, still spending a lot of time together, I think there was something that was definitely, like, rewritten in my own narrative, which was, like, I can have love that is actually, like, not punitive. I can be in a relationship where that, like, I'm worthy and deserving of a person who will show up for me and, like, not break me down. Because I think I had a lot of relationships prior to you where they were really verbally and emotionally abusive, and I feel like it would have been really easy in that type of dynamic to, like, maybe I would have cheated on you and you would have been like, for the rest of my life, could have been like, "Remember that time you cheated on me?" and held it over my head. You know what I'm saying?
Mhm.
And it would have been like a great excuse for any person, not really, but to be like, "Well, now I control you and, like, your every move," and, like, I think had we not done the work that it was that we did around, like, okay, well, what does this actually mean? Then, could have definitely turned into more of that, like, control type of, like, black and white thinking that we were, like, talking about in terms of, like, here are the expectations that traditionally happen without question. But it did force a conversation around, like, well, what, again, like what you said, what's happening here? And, like, what are our expectations for each other? Like, what are our desires for each other? What makes us uncomfortable? And how do we, like, meet in that? You know what I'm saying?
Mhm.
Mhm.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I mean, I think it's definitely layered, and I don't know, a part of me what comes up when as I'm hearing you talk about it is like th- when rebuilding trust or like trying to rebuild trust after infidelity is like, to at least to me, like my experience of it was like I can see your humanity still. Like you're not just your action. There is a humanness part to it, at least for me. Like I was curious about the humanness about it. Like what is causing this? Like I'm not gonna hate you. This may or may not work
Mhm.
after this. And I think I was very clear about that for myself. Of like, I don't know if it's gonna work, but I'll see it out because I still see the person in you, even though you think that I can't handle you. Like, let me actually find out if I can,
I
you know?
know, like, what that's so cool to think, like, that you were able to be like, "Oh, I'm still in a place of curiosity."
I mean,
Like,
I didn't know at that time that that's what I was doing. But again, I think it's because a lot of my life, and maybe I'm thinking back now, and like a lot of my life, especially with women, there is a lot of uncertainty, and it stems from my mom. Right? Like there is an uncertainty around women. My mom's a liar. I can't like she lies a lot. She lied to me for most of my life about certain things. So there is a lot of like non-closure there. And I would say even in my other relationships before, there was a lot of non-closure the way they ended. I always rack my head, and this is a weird thought, but like I always think back about my very first relationship and just trying to really think about like what the hell, how did we even break up? Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, how did that even happen? And I cannot remember to save my life. Like, what happened? What led to that? And maybe I played a role, maybe they played a role, maybe we both played a role, but I don't remember. And even with the person that had this expansive, cheating like story, like I can't recall like what exactly how it ended, when it ended. I just know the last day that I
mhm,
saw them, in my life, and I haven't seen them since. I know that, but I don't recall like an actual like this is done. So for me to re-engage it with you, I was like, I have an opportunity to close, even if it doesn't work. But
mhm,
that's my own healing and that's my own pain point that I had to recognize at that point. And I didn't particularly know it, but now I reflect on it of like,
mhm,
oh, what an opportunity actually to one understand humanity at another level, and then two, like I get to actually heal a part of myself that I've been searching to heal, which is to actually close
mhm.
for whatever that is.
Yeah,
Yeah.
appreciate that.
Mhm.
Okay. Any last thoughts, or you feel like we're good to go?
I think we're good to go. This is a long one of our longer episodes.
Yeah, I
Uh,
appreciate y'all. We
yeah, thank
appreciate
you.
y'all.
Thank you for folks that have came into the live and uh yeah, let us know what you think about
Yeah.
infidelity and your experiences and how you feel like you can build retrust, or maybe you don't feel like you can rebuild trust after all,
Yeah,
because I
maybe
think
you're like, "Fuck
because
them."
I know that there is that stance. So like, well, once you're done with me, once you did it, it's done. And maybe that's, maybe there is something, but there is an encouragement for me on my end of like to really dive into like where those thoughts come from and where they stem from, and actually being able to name the pain.
Yeah.
So
Alright. Well, good night, everybody. Thank you for tuning in.
thank you.
Let's do that.